My guest on the potty today is Dan Camac. He's an Australian backyard ultra representative with a PB of 93 loops. But what interested me about Dan was his versatility. So he also has a PB in the marathon of 2 hours 33. And to go even deeper, he's only been running since 2019. So we actually started at similar times. So to see the arc of his career versus my passion at just sort of trotting around these trails is all the more mind-boggling for someone like myself who's so passionate about running and in the coaching space as well. We talk about a whole bunch of things within the sport, why he likes to train with that sort of versatility and loves training that top end speed in road racing, but then also wants to push himself to the absolute limits in the backyard format as well. We talk about Phil Gore's Project 168. If you haven't heard of that, be sure to listen and get his thoughts. You know, he's competed alongside Phil. Some of the insights that he's taken from Phil and is looking to apply to his own training in efforts to crack the 100 loop mark in his backyard ultra at Sat Champs later in the year. I think you're really going to enjoy this one. It's a really down-to-earth conversation. You know, we talk a lot on this podcast about everyday people like you and I that are just having a crack and have to fit it around life. And I think with where backyard ultra is at the moment, every single one of those, right up to the top, including Phil Gore, you know, they are still working. So to hear someone like Dan, who's just recently quit his job as a landscaper after 14 years, you know, it's interesting to hear what he hopes is on the other side of not having to work so physically laborious job every single day. So yeah, without further ado, this is my conversation with Dan Camac.
G'day, mate. Thanks so much for jumping on the potty. You know, we've had our little back and forths over the last couple of months. I think you've sort of found me on socials with some of the stuff that I was sharing from a coaching perspective. And, you know, I already knew who you were prior to you following me, you know, from all your exposure and your efforts in the backyard ultra world. So thank you so much for jumping on the potty. I really appreciate you taking your time to talk everything running. So I guess the first thing that I wanted to dive into that may not be so much a personal thing for yourself, but it's an opinion that I want to get since you've spent a lot of time with the man and competed alongside him multiple times. But Phil Gore's Project 168 that he'll be tackling at the end of the month. What are your thoughts on him stepping outside of a organized backyard setting? And I guess we should probably lay the platform for those that aren't aware of what's going on. So Phil Gore, current, you know, backyard world record holder. A lot of the times that he's even run, you'd argue the last two world records that he's set looked like he had more in the tank, definitely the most recent one. And he's now going to push for a 7-day straight effort following the same backyard approach. So there's 6.7 Ks every hour on the hour, but it's not going to be in a race setting. He's doing it solo, no other competitors, and he's just going to see if he can break that 7-day mark. So what are your thoughts on what Phil's got in store? And, you know, do you see a point in trying to tackle something like this when there is going to be no official record that's going to be set?
Yeah. Firstly, thanks for having me on. It's just great to be here and always happy to talk about running. Yeah, it's just something I could talk about forever, I think. So, yeah, really
Awesome.
excited. And yeah, Project 168, I really like it. Some people are going to argue, okay, it's not an official record. Is it worth it? I think I look at things like Eliud Kipchoge when and Phil actually talks about this when he had a time trial where he tried to break 2 hours for the marathon. So it wasn't an official record, but it was a chance to show what's humanly possible. So I think some people would look at what Elliot did and go, well, it's not official. Why does it matter? But I think it's just about showing what's possible. And Phil is the Michael Jordan of backyard ultras. And even though he's not in an official race, I think it's awesome that we can see what the GOAT is truly capable of. And it'll be under the same conditions in that he has to run the same distance. It's all going to be certified properly. Like, you know, he's not running 6Ks. It'll be all properly, you know, sorted out, things like that. So I'm a really big fan of it. And I think he deserves the opportunity to test himself in that way, particularly with the format. It's not like a marathon where you push as hard as you can go. the backyard, we've seen that he has had more, like you said, left in the tank. And he said it himself. You see a dead cow when he ran the 119, and he looked fresh as. He was just standing there, had the Australian flag up like this. Sam was half dead on the chair. So I think good on him. Like, go for it, see what you're capable of, try and run for a week, and I honestly think he can do it.
Awesome. I want to get your thoughts as a competitor. Now, to start to share a bit more of your background, your PR is 93 loops. So you've represented the country alongside Phil at Biggs. What does, let's say that he runs 168. Are you hoping that there's going to be then nuggets of gold that you can get from him to help better your 93? Like, do you think that there's benefits for him accomplishing this that can serve you personally as well? Is that another side of it that you look at too?
Definitely. So I think there's something in, once someone's done something, it just opens the gate for everyone else to, you look at Roger Bannister. Everyone thought
Yes.
the 4-minute mile was impossible. He broke it, and then I think within a couple of weeks, someone else broke it. And now, you got all these people. Josh Kerr, he ran 3:42 recently for the mile. So I think it just helps. It helps inspire others, but it also shows, hey, if Phil can do 168, heck, I reckon I can definitely get 100. You know what I mean? Like, I would
Right.
really love to break up
Yep.
100. And
For
that's,
sure.
nearly 3 days less than what Phil did. So I think it's just, it's when someone else achieves greatness and they're sort of up here, I think it just helps to drag you along with them as well. So I remember last year, Phil had a backyard ultra clinic. So he had his marquee set up. He had lots of tips for people, ran like a 6-hour simulation. And I learned so much. This was after Biggs. So,
Oh, cool.
I'd done 93, but there was just so many tips. I was busy writing notes the whole time. Just the way that he has organized everything, has it all set there. He's like a machine in his running, but also in his planning. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I think there'll definitely be a lot more tips to be able to learn from Phil.
Yeah. So do you think that's the biggest sort of steps that you need to make, is more so the planning, like to get prepped for what you need to be doing, or some variations that you need to be considering during the race? Like, what did your approach to the 93 look like versus how you plan to do it next time based off this camp that you've done with Phil?
Yeah, I think for me, the training is fine. I'm happy to coach myself and get the Ks in. I feel like I've got a bit of an intuitive feel for the training load and recovery and all those sort of things. And backyards are good because you can do a fair bit of walking, hiking as well. So I quite like that. It's a race where the race
Yeah.
pace is quite slow. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think just from the crew side, having things a lot more organized and having a bit more of a system. I'm a bit sort of fly by the seat of your pants and kind of see how it goes. At
Uh-huh.
Biggs, I only had one crew member as well, so that was pretty
Right.
tough. Poor old dad was 93 hours up with me as well. But
Wow. What a
yeah,
weapon.
yeah, right. He absolutely smashed it. So, but yeah, I really don't want to do that to someone again for that long, just to have someone
Yeah.
solo. And Biggs is hard because it's got all the specific rules and it's quite expensive, obviously,
Mhm.
to have people come over with me. But yeah. So I think just that organization aspect of it, having a crew and just tightening up on a few sort of decision making things as well. Like, I shouldn't be thinking it all, because by the end of it, your mind, I didn't even know what was going on really by the end of Bigs. So it
Yeah. How much sort of sleep had you accrued across that 93? Do you remember roughly?
was probably about 2 hours.
Wow.
So yeah, something that I really need to work on. So
Uh-huh.
I
Is
remember,
that what you've been finding hardest, is trying to get that sleep? Because it seems like that's what Phil and Sam are really, really good at.
yeah, they're really good at that. They're really good at running faster. I think I've just been stuck in the mindset of, you want to run fast, so you run slow.
Mhm.
And it's actually beneficial to do some laps faster, try and bank some sleep. I think probably not having caffeine on the first night would be helpful,
Mhm.
because you're having caffeine, you sort of buzzed a bit. you just had a no dose, but it's 3 a.m. and you should really be sleeping. So that would be a change that I make for the upcoming SAT champs, just to
Yeah.
not have caffeine night one, particularly because we start at 11 p.m. So
Yeah, of course.
7 hours in and you're already at daybreak. So I think night one, night two, maybe no caffeine, and then night three, you can have caffeine and you'll still fall asleep. So just a few changes, but it's good to have some specific things that I can work on. That clearly, this is a weakness. If I can work on this, I'm going to hopefully see some improvement. So
And are you taking a bigger crew this year?
I'm going to have about 4 people.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So mum and
So
dad.
who's heading over with you?
I'm going to have mum and dad with me. I'm going to have my wife, and then a guy who I actually met in Bali, Murray, who I don't know if you know Murray, but he's starting up a backyard in Bali, which is pretty cool. So
Nice.
he's had Tim from Dead Cow. I'll sort of get behind him as well and helping him with all the setup stuff and that kind of thing. So he's actually flying all the way over. He just loves backyards, and he really wants to be part of the SAT champs. And he said, hey, when I was over in Bali in January, hey, like, I'd be happy to crew for you. So he's going to fly all the way over from Bali and help crew and be a part of the event, which is awesome.
That's unreal. How cool. And like a great learning curve for him as well, like as a prospective race director. And I think that's what you see is here in Australia, I don't really see any race directors that are like trying to hoard anything or protect information. You know, Tim's always very forthcoming about what he's been doing at Dead Cow. You know, I've met Sean Casler, who's obviously big on the West Coast, and he's spoken about, you know, how he was like introducing Tim and how Tim was picking his brains about everything that he'd been doing at like Hurdy's and in Melbourne and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I think it's really important that like the community continues to keep the open book. And we see that from like even an athlete point of view as well. Yeah, here we are.
No, that's all right.
So yeah, I think I was saying just about the race directors and then leading into the athletes sort of keep an open book as well and being so forthcoming. I almost feel like backyard is a level above just ultra running in general when it comes to sharing. And I mean, I think there's no greater example than the one that you gave before with Phil running clinics, wanting to help people go bigger, go further. It's so inspiring. And I think it naturally lowers that personal expectation that someone new to backyards or even new to running, I think it's doing a great job at bringing in completely novice runners to the sport. I was on a podcast on the weekend with a young fella here in Brisbane who's a bodybuilding physio who's caught the running bug, and he's actually going to run his first backyard next year in outback Queensland, and that's going to be his first introduction to ultra running. And I just think it's becoming more and more common. The fact that, you know, it is that lower intensity, like you mentioned earlier, and there's no reason you can't just stop, you know, like, yeah, that's the art, obviously, to going big is to not succumb to that when you've got you guys at the top end that don't want to stop. But then also if, you're a novice and it's not your day and you're just happy to take the learnings, you can get away really unscathed, get a nice, good learning experience and pretty much turn around and do another one in a not too distant future. You know, I think it's really friendly in being able to build up and create that race day exposure. But then that leads me to another point that you were discussing earlier, saying that, you know, it's not just going slow that's important. You probably need to practice going faster so that you can try and bank the sleep. What I want to talk about is, how did you land on the approach of going slower when you've also got the ability to run a 2:33 marathon? So that's something that's always intrigued me about your ability, is it's not just going big, but you're also very, very fast. I know that, you know, as any individual, we're always hypercritical, and you probably don't view yourself as overly fast, and everyone always wants to go faster. But if you're running 2:33, you can run. You know what I mean? Respective to most people that are entering a backyard. I think most people that enter a backyard would never dream of going sub 3, let alone 2:33. So how did you come up with like your initial pacing strategy to backyard? How did you find backyard? And I guess, you know, how did you develop the ability to go big whilst being able to go so fast?
Yeah, I think to your last question, I always train from like a least specific to most specific sort of window. So when I'm, 3 months out from a backyard, I'm just doing some speed work. My long run's not super long. So by the time I get to race day, I haven't been doing 3, 4 hour long runs for 3 months, and then I'm really tired. So I guess I'm always doing speed work throughout the year. Um, it's obviously, yeah, as I get closer to the race, it's not my focus, but
Mhm.
I enjoy running fast. I run a 5K on the weekend. I just enjoy racing. So I guess I've always got some sort of speed in the legs. You could even be doing strides and you're not really taxing the body. So
Mhm.
yeah, I just enjoy doing sessions, running quick. And as you said, you always want to be a little bit faster, don't you? But
Yes.
yeah. What was the other questions?
Then
How
how
did
did
I?
you sort of develop that into your pacing strategy for finding backyard ultras? Like how did that transition from going fast, wanting to race competitively, to then, okay, I want to do this thing where you're trying to go far as you can for days on end. Like
Yeah,
how did that switch your approach, or what even like intrigued you into wanting to do that versus going quick?
I think it's just cool being able to have that range. There's lots of people who could run fast and also run far, but they just don't. Like
Yep.
usually people will stick to one or the other, I think. So I just like the idea of, I'm doing a backyard and then suddenly I'm in a 5K and it's just kind of like, oh, this guy, does a little bit of everything and enjoys it all. So I think with the backyards and with ultras in general, that's actually what I started with was ultras. I just jumped straight to
Right.
ultras and was just really intrigued with the mental aspect, I guess. You watch the Olympic marathon and you think, well, the body can run further than a marathon, but they just stop there because that's the end of the race.
Mhm.
Like, what happens to your mindset when you push to 50K? What happens when you double that and you go to 100? So I guess I've always just had that curiosity and intrigue about the mental side of the ultra running, but I also love just the physical fight in the shorter, faster stuff. So yeah, I guess in terms of the pacing, I've always done like a 3-2, so 3 minute run, 2 minute walk, and
Okay.
I think the reason I have run so slow in the past is because the backyard doesn't have a finish line. So I haven't seen the worth in running faster, but now I'm starting to get that when you get to night 4 and you haven't had any sleep. It obviously gets a little bit too hard. So I think if for any other race where it's like 100 miler or 100K, I would be pushing as fast as I can go. But it's just been that unique format for the backyard to try and figure out the right pacing. So I feel like I'm learning that now.
Yeah. You don't think that we could see in the future, maybe you and Sam Harvey see who could run the quickest loop on loop one? Maybe just go full send straight out the gate.
Hey, that'd be fun. I reckon he'd have me though, but it might be pretty tight. He's quick.
Mate,
He's
he
quick, man.
he has got some wheels, yeah. And
Yeah,
that's what
yeah.
I've always appreciated by you guys at the top end who have that flexibility, like you said, to be able to go fast and go far.
Mm,
And I think there's something to it. And I mean, Phil's got that as well. I think people
totally.
underestimate how quick that guy is. It's not just about going big. He's got a real high ceiling as well as a dump truck floor as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's nuts.
He's
Um,
he's like a perfect mix between that like diesel truck and a sports car feel. Like he
yes,
somehow has both
yes.
perfectly, like at the really elite end. So yeah.
Yeah. I wonder how much has been an influence of all the park run stuff that he did for so many years prior. Just tackling that shorter, faster, but then just stacking and stacking and stacking. It was almost like he was doing both at the same time.
Mm,
And it's weird how that one challenge started to sort of part the seas for what ended up eventuating as backyard as a sport and what he's been able to do now. So, you're mentioning how you use the 3-2 method. Are you planning on ditching that? Or are you going to sort of just use it sparingly? What's your thinking sort of heading into bigs?
so yeah, I still want to use the 3-2 for most of my day loops, and that gets me in about 50 minutes. So I'm pretty happy with that. But in terms of the night, I'm going to switch to a one fast, one slow. So 40 to 45 minutes, and then probably just a 3-2 again. Even
Yep.
even maybe just walk a bit, run a bit. I find that after a while, like sort of like day 3, day 4, I start to just run a bit, walk a bit, because it gets a bit hard to think about the minutes after
For
a
sure.
while with it. Okay, I'm running to 3, walking to 5, running back to 8. Like it gets a bit messy.
Yeah,
So
where am I at?
yeah,
Plus, when am I getting hydration in? When am I taking this carb, this bloody salt? Yeah, it
totally.
must be a nightmare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
How have you found the sleep deprivation side of things? Is there anything in your training that you ever do to try and do any prep, or do you think that that sort of negates any sort of recovery benefits that you're going to receive from training? How do you sort of approach that?
yeah, so in terms of the actual sleep deprivation, I actually find it quite fun in the race initially when you start getting a little bit loopy, because you're less focused on the pain, and you look around and you see the trees are sort of moving like this, and that person that you thought was there is actually a rubbish bin and that kind of thing. Like it's actually quite fun, but then it gets to a point where it's affecting the race badly and you're not thinking properly,
Right.
and yeah, that kind of thing. But I don't really train it, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I remember, who was it? Holly had put out. She normally does like a 6-hour simulation overnight, so she'll start at I think 2, go through to
Mhm.
about 8 a.m. and then have a lap, maybe like 2 and 4 faster. And so she'll practice those early hours with a few faster laps in between. So I would like to do that a little bit leading into the Sat Champs, and just practice a little bit more nighttime hours, because I do find it really hard. Which, I mean,
Yeah.
heck, we all find it hard, but I just really don't like it. From midnight till 5 a.m., I'm hating it. All of my backyards I've quit in that time period.
Ah, interesting.
Oh,
Yeah,
except for the first one. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, right. So what is it about the nighttime? Do you think it's just your body's craving for sleep, and that the fact that it's just such an unorthodox period?
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. You're just
Yeah.
thinking about bed. You're thinking, why am I doing this? But then you get that boost if you can make it to sunrise. So yeah.
And what strategies have you implemented during the race to try and keep those negative thoughts and wanting to tap at bay? Like, do you have any sort of resources? Are you relying on crew to sort of ask you certain questions? Like, how do you go about approaching, preventing the DNF essentially?
Mm. I have a list of things that my crew can say to me when I'm struggling. So I've got actually written down on a piece of paper, remind me of this race, when I got through that, and just a few sort of inspirational quotes, or things like that. So things that I know that I'll need in that moment to sort of be prepared for that. Um, yeah, and I think you need to be able to have the right people in your corner as well. You need people that
Mhm.
are going to give you that tough love and are going to give you a way out. And so it's going to be interesting, because I've got my wife crewing for me for the first time, and I'm not sure how she'll go seeing me in a really, tough state late in the race. Like, I know mum and dad, they've crewed for me a number of times already,
Mhm.
and they're really good at just giving me that tough love and sending me back out. So you really
Yeah.
need to make sure you've got the right people in your corner.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. My wife has done nothing but crew for me for all my big races, and she's very good at give me that tough love,
Yeah.
and pushing me out there when I need it. But yeah, I've coached some other people. I've coached some couples that I knew it was going to be fraught with danger, that it was going to be probably the other spouse, the person who wasn't competing, the crew member, that could potentially lead to the DNF more than the individual that was racing, simply because they didn't want to see them hurt anymore, or they were stressed about being responsible for pushing them out there and something going wrong, and having to deal with the consequences of putting them in a precarious situation. So you're right, it is a very difficult thing to I guess prepare for, and you won't know until it's there. But I'm sure the fact that you said that your folks have sort of been there and done it, and they've got the experience, it'll be nice. It'd probably be a different story if it was just you and the wife this time
I
out
think
and no
so.
one else there. That might put a bit too much pressure on her, but Yeah, it is interesting learning how someone does operate in those situations, what does and doesn't work. And I guess if you were to give any advice to any crew for, like, say, first time crew, like what are you trying to tell your wife at the moment, to expect, or things that you want? What are some advice that we could give other runners to give to their crew members?
Yeah, that's such a good point because it really is a team effort. You've got one person that's running, but essentially, the crew has to do as much as possible. So have a plan, and I think allowing the crew member to be in charge over the runner is really important, particularly later on in the race. You're doing the thinking for them. You're making the decisions.
Yes.
The ideally the runner is just running, and maybe they come in and they want different food than what's on the plan, but the crew members in charge, the crew members making their decisions. They're on the ball. They're you have to play a lot of different roles. Sometimes you're more of like the paramedic that has to come in and patch up the blister or whatever they're doing with the feet. Sometimes they're the coach. Sometimes they're the cheerleader. So being able to have the different hats to wear for the runner is really important. And I've heard it a few times and been surprised at how difficult it is. It's not just a lot of people think it's sort of just sitting around and kind of sipping a coffee and then, oh yeah, what do you need? But like you got to be on the ball. You have to be prepared for some tough hours and to be able to make decisions quickly and things like that.
Hmm.
So it can be quite tough.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting. You sort of said the, I guess, misconstrued idea that you're sort of just sitting around, for 45, 50 minutes, on your hands and just being pretty passive when they come in. That time goes really quick as well because you are actually thinking about it. You might be out there for another 5 or 6 minutes after they leave just to sort of watch and see what's going on. And then you're going back and assessing, okay, what did they just take? You might be making some notes about, what fuel they took with them, what sort of fluids they've got on, what sort of shape are they in, what am I preempting for next time I see them, what time of day is it? Like there's a lot going on. Like you're almost like a pit crew for motorsport, you know what I mean? You're really trying to
Yeah.
dial in and anticipate on the fly what's happening, but then at the exact same time, as soon as they come in, all of that plan might go out the window and you've just got to go into like operator mode as well. So yeah, it's not just like a one size fits all approach, and it's crazy. Yeah, just how quickly it goes. I guess I
Mhm.
wanted to sort of pivot the conversation away from backyard a little bit now and just have a bit more of a look at your career and what's going on at the moment. We spoke briefly off camera. I saw that you posted that you've quit your landscaping job. So
Mm.
what does life look like for Dan now? Are you coaching full time? What's pretty much the lay of the land right now for you?
Yeah, so I quit my landscaping job last Friday, which yeah, I've been landscaping for nearly 14 years now, straight after school. Um, and I've moved into disability support work now full time. So
Oh,
Monday
cool.
to Friday. Yeah, yep. So I completed my Cert 3 about 3 months ago,
Hmm.
and yeah, moving into that Monday to Friday now. I'm doing a little bit privately and a little bit with the company now, which is great. So I think for me, I was just looking at what career can I be doing into my 40s and 50s, and paving isn't a great option. So it's been good, and I've learned a lot of skills along the way and made a lot of great friends. But yeah, it was just time for a change. So, and I'm doing a little bit of coaching now. I started coaching about 3 months ago, so just doing that a little bit on the side. Have just a few clients, and would love to slowly build that up um, to do maybe about a couple of days a week. So
Mhm.
yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I'm just happy changing careers at the moment and doing a bit of coaching for people on the side. So it's exciting. I feel like I'm at a new chapter now.
Absolutely. And has it given you like a little bit of a reboot as far as energy is concerned into like your training and preparation for Bigs itself?
Yeah, I hope so. I only left last Friday, so I guess the body's still a bit cooked maybe. But
Yeah.
yeah, we'll see. I'm assuming that I'll be able to train more and recover better. So yeah, it was. it was getting pretty tough. It was getting harder and harder to put together, 100K plus weeks with quality and lifting paper straight out. So, but I didn't have to go to the gym, so maybe that was a bonus.
Yeah, it's one thing that people don't take into consideration. My coaching background sort of stems from like strength and conditioning, powerlifting type stuff. And I've still got a couple of old clients that are strictly powerlifting clients, and they're tradies, and trying to just manage that fatigue for them and just let them know it's like, hey, like you're using your body in a like really similar capacity for hours on end as well. So we need to sort of be taking into consideration what you're doing. And yeah, running is no different. Like if you're working a laborious job and trying to, run 100K plus weeks, like that's gonna to start to add up. But yeah, I imagine it sort of carried its benefits from a strength capacity for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely not all bad. I think I've hardly ever gotten injured. I've obviously, I've had a few niggles here and there, which you'll get, and pulled up pretty sore, obviously, from some races and stuff. But yeah, I think part of running, which can be overlooked, is you still want to have a strong body. Running is very, high impact. So being able to have that strong frame and a body that can handle the mileage is really important. So it definitely hasn't been a bad thing at all.
Yeah, 100%. And when it comes to coaching, what's sort of like the philosophy that you've begun with as a coach? Like what sort of clientele are you looking to attract? Who's on your books at the moment? Is it backyard stuff? Is it sort of more gen pop sort of park run stuff? Talk me through where you're starting off as from a coaching perspective.
So my ideal client is the intermediate ultra runner who's just looking to level up. So I'm not coaching beginners. I just simply want to coach people that have a good understanding of running. They've done a few ultras and they're just looking for a bit more guidance in their running. That's really the ideal avatar for me, I guess you'd say. So
Yep.
yeah, my philosophy is I really want to be able to coach people in a way that ultimately they'd be able to coach themselves. So I really want to just impart knowledge, and I guess the actual training itself is very effort based. So RPE, rate of perceived exertion, you could be running along and how hard is this out of 10? So it's just teaching the runners to be able to control effort, which is super important. Like if you're in a hilly 100K race, pace is going to be very irrelevant,
Yeah.
so being able to get the client to go out for an easy run at a 3 to 4 out of 10. And then when they're in the race, this is the intensity that we're going to be targeting. You've been practicing that in your training. I think it's just a really valuable skill to learn. So it's very effort based, time based. I'm not a massive fan of distance. I think one of the traps that you can fall into is you go out for an easy run and you run too fast. And so one of the good ways of dealing with that is to go out and do a 30-minute easy run rather than a 5K easy run. So no matter how fast you're running, you're out there for the same amount of time. So I think it can just be helpful to do time-based stuff. So
Yeah,
yeah.
interesting. I used a lot of time-based stuff in the early parts of coaching, especially for that sort of intermediate runner like you were talking about. The biggest thing that I found that most average people struggled with was the pacing concept and learning that RPE based off just time. And when there was like too many data points to sort of interpret off feel, some people just wanted something a bit more concrete to follow off.
Yes.
So yeah, it is tricky to find because yeah, I was someone who did use time initially, particularly on like the long runs, like when people are trying to figure all that out and different terrain, like you were sort of saying, the last thing that you want is to say program, a 25K long run, and that takes someone, 4.5 hours. Like that's probably like going to be too much for someone that's probably at that level, unless they have the lifestyle that affords them the ability to put out that time and recover from that stimulus adequately. But yeah, it's interesting. I like both sides of the approach from an education point of view. I've found in more recent time, I've started to use distance a little bit more for certain things. And I guess that comes just down to understanding the client's needs, right? I think that's what any coach does, is they have the ability to pivot and not marry themselves to any one way. And I think especially with like backyard, like time-based stuff is really handy as well, because it gets them used to effort-based, and the fact that time is constant in a backyard and distance is constant. Like, you can sort of really get used to the pacing strategies that are going to be required for something like that. But it's always the first thing that someone's asking me that I find challenging with like trail ultras is, how fast should I be going? Like, and then it might even like be overthinking to the point of like, what should my grade adjusted pace look like? It's like, no, you shouldn't be looking at that anytime you're on a trail, really, because there's going to be so many inconsistencies. And then I've seen people who try and use power, and I just don't think the accuracy is really there or really warranted, because it doesn't marry up to the specific type of terrain you're on. Like, if you're on something super technical, I don't think it marries over quite as well. And it's just another thing for an individual to finesse over too much and just forget, just be out there. Listen to what's happening with your body. And then after a while, if we analyze some data and you think you're going easy and all I can see on your heart rate is like 160 to 175, it's like, okay, your perception of what you think is easy is clearly way off then. And we need to strip that right back. But like, once you sort of give them those indicators, then I think it's something else to build off. So I really like that approach. And I think there's so much to be warranted from strategizing from both. But personally, I've found that both sides sort of work. It just depends on the individual and how you're able to sort of communicate that across.
Yeah, you do make a really good point about people not necessarily being that well in tune with their body. And so I do, that's why I want to coach intermediate runners. Like, I wouldn't give a beginner runner effort. I would give them pace based off like a recent race performance. So I think and you do really have to know the client as well. So sometimes I will have some pace guides in there, particularly when I'm starting out with someone, just to give them a bit of a guide, because it can be hard to figure it out. It takes a little while to get to know effort and to get to know, all these different things. I think for a lot of the metrics, it can be helpful to look at it sort of in the rearview mirror after a race. So like, you've got the race there, you're not looking at it at the time, but you're kind of looking at it, you get all your data that you can see after a race. So I think it can just be a little bit distracting sometimes. But again, you have to take every client individually. You can't just treat everyone the same, and different personalities and different strengths and weaknesses. And some people probably would do well off looking at some data. Some people probably be too analytical and get in their own head a little bit. So, and that's the reason you coach, isn't it? Like, it's not just an AI, like just, this works for everyone. Like, what works for this person isn't going to work for that person. And that's the reason that people want to be coached by a human.
Yeah, totally agree. I think being in that age of AI, and I actually think there's no better time to be a coach than right now, because you're going to start to see who's just relying on AI to write these programs. You're going to start to notice patterns in the way things are written and stuff like that. And just the lack of nuance that can be given from a human, just from a tough love perspective. I was having this conversation with, I think it was Jem on the podcast the other week, and saying, it was the podcast that I was on the weekend that I was talking to you about with Lawrence. And I was saying that's one thing that AI doesn't do very well, is tell you you're doing shit, or telling you you need to level the fuck up. Like, it's pretty much there to pat you on the back and just be a conscientious bystander. So there's a nuance to coaching that sometimes you need to be like, hey, Dan, like, you're just pushing way too hard at the moment, dude. Like, what is actually important to you right now? Is it getting the result at Bigs, or is it having this hero workout that you can post on your Strava that you get, 100 likes on? So like, AI is never going to write you the program to stop you from doing that.
Yeah,
it's always just going to be like, oh, it'll find a way to justify something. And I've had those clients that have tried to use AI thinking that that was going to be the answer for them. And they've shared some of the workouts that we're doing. And it's crazy what some people will push through. I had a client that was trying to prep to run I think it was a sub 3 hour marathon or something on debut. And she'd failed like 4 workouts in a row and was still continuing to add volume to those workouts week on, week out.
Oh, man.
You know what I mean? And was
Yeah.
wondering why she was experiencing hamstring niggles and stuff like that. It's like, what? AI is not saving you from that if you're not giving it the right data and all sorts of stuff. Like, that's what people forget as well. If AI is pretty much only as good as the prompt. So if you suck at prompts, it's not going to be quality stuff that it's giving back to you. And that's where it's nice to have conversations with clients. And that's what I enjoy. I run different coaching models from small group to one-to-one, but there's always weekly contacts, no matter what tier you're on. And just being able to answer those little questions of, oh, what should I be doing here? Or I've got this coming up this week. What little tweak can I make? And having that nuance, it also just reassures you that you do bring value to an individual, like as a person, not just, okay, what do they do as a runner, but it's like, how do they show up as a spouse, as a parent? Like, how is this matched against their work career? Like I'm sure if the big thing that you've analyzed a lot is, how do I stop this laborious job to help benefit before? They're all things that, a good coach is looking at and treating differently, because you couldn't treat you the same. Like, I'm sure now you're going to hope that you recover in the way that you're anticipating, and that you'll be able to manipulate some variables that are going to make you an even better version of Dan.
Yeah, totally. It's so complicated when you really look at everything, isn't it? Training is, if you're doing a lot of volume, it might be 15 hours of your week, but you've got another 151, as Phil would know how many hours are in a week. But yeah, it's so true. So you make a good point. Like, there's so many people out there getting AI plans and that sort of thing, running's booming, and that actually just means that there's a lot of people in the market for coaching and looking to, run their first marathon or do their first ultra. It's a super exciting time as a coach.
Yeah. And I think just not thinking like you need this massive following and you need to have all this fancy tools, like, that's not what this running community is about either. They just want personability. If you can bring a personality to the table, you show that you care, you're clearly invested in them as an individual, you can have really good connections with people online and build yourself, a great little business online. And it was something that I was concerned about, moving from in-person to online, because I'd forged all those relationships over years and years and years in person. I've got clients that I've, been coaching for more than a decade, and I still continue to coach. And I was worried that you wouldn't be able to develop that sort of connection. And lo and behold, I was completely wrong. I've got, some international clients that I've had on the books for a couple of years already. And we oftentimes just catch up for a call just to see how they're doing on a personal level. Like, I know their kids that they're raising and stuff now. They know what's going on in my kid's life. And you really can forge those if you want to do it that way. Like, there's always barriers that you do need to put up as a coach, and make sure that you're not overstepping boundaries and just being totally consumed by, like you were saying off camera earlier, like just getting stuck on your phone or having to be on the computer here and there. And it's tough. It's an ever evolving space, but it is one that is definitely fraught with possibility for us right now.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. What do things look like for, I guess, your goals as a runner? So as a competitor, where do you see yourself in, let's keep it a bit shorter, let's say the next 2 or 3 years? What are some of your big ambitions? Is it largely still based in the backyard scene? You obviously want to crack that 100 loop mark. Are there other competitive distance races? Do you aspire to go into any sort of trail distances? Give us an insight there.
Yeah, so I'm at an interesting period. Obviously, I've dropped the landscaping work. So again, I feel like it's a new chapter for me. I really, obviously, I want to crack 100 in a backyard, and I thought I was going to do it at Bigs, and I got so close. So I've definitely got some unfinished business there. So we've got SAT champs coming up in October, which will be really exciting. Getting to run for Team
Yeah.
Australia again. So I mean, hopefully I can crack 100 there. That'll be the goal. But at the same time, I'm holding it loosely in that I don't want to just go in with that goal and then do 100 yards and then stop. So it's in the back of my
Uh-huh.
mind, but I don't want to focus on it too much. So there's that. That's
Uh-huh.
exciting. Next March, there's actually I live in Adelaide. There's a new backyard starting in Adelaide, which is exciting. So you've got a bunch of the hardcore Harry's guys that are kind of getting around this event as well. And we've got a guy, Hayden, who's just really wanting to set up a great backyard, which is awesome. So excited for that. Want to try and win that one. I've never won a backyard before. I
Nice. When is that
actually,
taking place? Do you know?
it's the same weekend as Hurdy, so it's the middle of March.
Okay, cool.
So I had a look like a couple of months ago, and I think at the time, I was the second highest backyard PB in the world without winning an event. So I really want to be able to win an event.
Shake
So
that record.
yeah. The best I've got is second, like twice. So yeah, I would love to be able to win one. So that's definitely the goal for Adelaide next year.
Nice.
And then yeah, I'm in a kind of a weird spot at the moment where I feel like I have to really improve in the distances, whether I choose ultra or like road racing. I really have to set my mind on one and kind of just stick with that for a while. So
Mhm.
I'm tempted to go to Dead Cow, the Masters next year
Mhm.
in June or July, but I'm also really tempted to go down the road racing path for a little while and see how fast I can get from the 5K to the marathon. So I'd love to break 2:20 for the marathon one day. I think it's possible.
Hell yeah.
Still a little way off to 2:33, but would love to break 15 for the 5K and just yeah. So yeah, I'm not sure what I do, but I'm leaning towards just sticking to some road racing for probably a year and a half, and really go for that.
Yeah, awesome. I think if you think of it from like a physiological point of view, I think it makes a lot of sense in the sense that, you know, the older we get, obviously our VO2 drops naturally. So your ceiling's only going to stay so high for so long. And if you feel like you're in some sort of prime or at the risk of coming to the end of it, I don't necessarily think that VO2 max is going to be preventative of what you're capable of in the backyard scene. So it makes sense to me as a science head. You know, that's not the be all and end all of why we do these things. But yeah, that makes sense to me, and I would love to see what you do. Has road racing like always been something that's intrigued you or been a part of your training? Like what did you grow up doing? Like were you a sports-based kid growing up? Like what's your background?
I played a lot of indoor soccer as a kid and
Okay.
just ran around a lot. Just a naturally kind of fast, fit kid, I guess, and did it right at sports days, but never took up running as a kid. So I actually started running in 2019, so not super long ago.
That's crazy to be
Yeah,
running as quick as you are and you're still new at it, you know?
yeah. So I ran my debut marathon in 2023 in 2:34. So I feel like there's a lot more there that I'd like to tap
100%.
into. So I ran Gold Coast about a month ago and ran 2:33.
Yeah.
So, and I hadn't done a road race in nearly a year and just jumped straight back into a marathon. So, you know, I feel like it wasn't the best setup for a PB. You know, could have raced a bit in the lead up and had a bit more experience. So I know that there's a lot more potential there, and I'd really love to chase that and maybe do a back-to-back build, which I've never done, and race a few
Mm.
5Ks and halves and tens, and I feel like there's so much more there, and I'd love to explore that.
Is there anything that like road racing versus say backyards gives you that the other one doesn't? Is there a reason you like to go back and forth, or is it sort of that flexibility that you like to try and maintain? Like what does it mean to you to do either?
Yeah, I think well, particularly, I wouldn't want to race too many backyards because they're just too hectic. I would race one or two in a year max. I think again, I really love the mental challenge of the backyard and pushing the limits, and it's such an amazing feeling to feel like you're dead at a certain lap, whatever it is, 30, 40, and then you push, and 10 hours later you're feeling way better. Like, it's just such a weird. At Bigs, I was struggling a fair bit in the 30s, and I was thinking, man, my hips were getting sore, but I got through that and did another 60 hours. So it's such a unique format, and I really enjoy it. But I also like running fast, so that's why I just love it all. To be honest, like, I really do. Love racing a 5K, love racing a marathon, love doing backyards. So I guess, yeah, it's good because it keeps training really interesting. 5K training is so different to backyard ultra, but it also means that I'm not able to probably reach the peak as much in either because I'm jumping around a lot. So, like you said, the physiology sort of side of it. So, yeah, I think I just really need to zero in now on choose one thing and kind of go for that. And being 30 years old, probably better to be doing the 5K sort of training now versus the backyard.
Yeah.
So,
Is there any particular marathon that you would love to try and compete at? Like, is there like international races, or you're sort of just happy racing domestically? Like, is there any sense of adventure there that you'd like to go and experience off the back of it?
yeah, I would love to do Berlin Marathon. That's one of the flattest world majors, and I'd love to go to Germany anyway and do some sightseeing. So that sounds like a good trip to me. I'd also love to race a marathon in Japan. That would be
interesting,
unreal. Like, those Japanese runners are crazy. They just absolutely love running.
Built different mentally, aren't they?
My coach ran. The guy that was coaching me for Gold Coast, Matt Fox, he ran in a half marathon one time over there. He ran 66 minutes and he wasn't in the top 200.
Oh my God.
Yeah. They just have they have unbelievable sub-elite depth. It's
Oh
crazy.
my God.
They probably have the most sub 230 runners in the world. Like, they don't have anyone in that
great point.
elite 205, sub 205 range, but between 210 and 230, it's like every guy can run under 230 over there, basically.
That's crazy. I mean, you look at all the races here, and there's always just a flood of Japanese guys at the top.
Yeah.
Constantly. Like, even at Sunny Coast on the weekend, I was just going through and I was just like, holy, these guys just have motors, hey?
Yeah. Yeah, I just love it.
That's crazy. 106 and you're not even in the top 200.
Yeah,
that's mind-boggling. What a kick in the nuts, speaking of nuts.
Yeah,
you know
right?
what I mean? It's like, what am I doing here? What's the point of all this?
If you run a 106 in Australia, you'd win most races probably, or you'd be top 10.
Yeah,
probably.
Exactly right. Wow, that's phenomenal, huh?
So I'd love to race
crazy.
maybe Osaka, or they've got so many good ones. So
yeah, absolutely.
That'd be cool.
Oh, that's exciting, man.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to happen at Bigs? Like, how long do you think the race could go for? Like, are you anticipating that we could see anything close to that 7 days, or do you think it's just too much of a perfect storm to ask for in a race format?
Yeah, it's such a good point. Like, you've obviously got all the countries competing at the same time, and the Russians are obviously, there was obviously that stuff about the disqualification, and which sucks, but they've obviously got so many good runners there, and I definitely see it getting a new world record, official 120 plus for sure. I think if everything went perfectly, I do think that you could see 6 days at the Sat Champs, but at the same time, I think there's an element of people get to the new world record and then they sort of put their foot off the gas a little bit, whereas Phil, he's really aiming for that 7-day thing. It seems to be that to get the world record, hey, I'm the best in the world. You sort of lose that motivation, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and it's one I would love to ask him. Yeah, what does keep him motivated? Is this Project 168 more motivating? Is that the reason why you decided to do it, even though you're not going to get anything official off the back of it? Like that's really what led me to championing it. Like I put a reel out the other day saying, this is what I love about people, in general, humans in general, the ones that are willing to just be like, I'm just so curious and I believe that I can do it. I just want to show what I can do, and the fact that he's got, a film crew behind him, I think is great. There's the charity side to it, which is always awesome. Yeah, I've just got nothing but respect for someone who's he's clearly not doing it for the accolades. Like, this is so intrinsic that I think it's to be championed, and it's so very Australian to want to do that.
Totally. No, I think it's such a great thing that he's doing, and he's proven time and time again that he's the best in the world. And it's a bit unfortunate for him at the moment because those guys broke his record, but then it wasn't official, and he's kind of in this yucky sort of place where does he call himself the world record holder, or does he kind of? I thought his video that he put up about, I'm not going to pretend that people haven't run further than me. I thought it was just a really good middle ground that he'd posted. So I think, he deserves the opportunity to be able to go in this special event and show that, he is. I mean, we all know it, but he's the greatest backyard ultra runner in the world. So gonna be
100%.
glued to the screen for a whole week.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. Yeah, and I think that's the cool part is from a spectator's perspective, you can sort of just come in and come out. And I know they've been rallying from an Olympic perspective here in Brisbane for 2032 about trying to get ultra marathons as a competitive sport in the Olympics. And I know that we're always going to struggle in the world of ultra because it's not standardized. So when it comes to, putting a course on the map, it's so different to, some of the world marathons where you're only going to have small differences in elevation profile. It seems less of a big deal about whether or not a world record is broken in the marathon, even though it's still possible at some of these Olympic events. But I always think it's going to be the biggest roadblock for trail ultras because there's just so much variation. You got sea level versus altitude, conditions, all that sort of stuff. Whereas I actually think backyard ultra is the perfect ultra format to make an Olympic event. I think it would be such a sick Olympic sport to see bigs one day transported to the Olympic Games. And the fact that you could sort of front load it, it's a 14-day competition. So you're definitely going to be able to fit it in there. And, it's just such a cool spectator sport to sort of have on the side and have the commentary, seeing the action that's going to be jammed in, because full well the whole field is going to be back in here within the next hour. So it's like, what are the updates? So you're literally getting a 60-minute news cycle for this event that could go for an entire week. I think it's got so many legs to go there. And I mean, no doubt we'd have to cross the big talking point in ultra at the moment about anti-doping and blah, 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 blah. But what do you think about that? Do you think that backyard stands a better opportunity for becoming an Olympic event? Would you like to see it become an Olympic event? Would that something that would motivate you to want to become an Olympian if it was to become an Olympic event?
Oh, for sure. If it ever became an Olympic event, I would drop everything else and aim for that, like 100%. That would be unreal. And I think because we're hosting the Olympic Games, we do get to choose a few different sports, I think is how it works.
Yep.
Yeah.
Correct.
So, I mean, it would be unreal to check in, and it would just be such a shock for people that 4 days after the opening ceremony, there's still most of the field left in this crazy race where they're running around in circles. Having said that, practically, I just don't think it'll happen. The marathon is such a loved event in running, and then to have something that just goes so much longer than the marathon, I think it kind of maybe doesn't look as good for the marathon runners, even though they're phenomenal athletes and we'd never be able to run as fast as them. I think it's just sort of a bit contradictory. You've got the long marathon that then is sort of overshadowed by this really long backyard ultra event. So I'm not sure it would work super well in terms of the Olympics, but I do like the idea of having, it in there, that would be unreal. Like, I would love nothing more than that. I'm just not
Can
sure
you
if it would
imagine?
actually happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that's been the cool part is, if it wasn't for this sport, you would never have represented our country at the
Mm.
highest level in a sport yet. So the fact that we're creating more and more opportunities for people to go out there and represent our nation at such tough events, like nothing about a backyard is easy when you're talking about it from a competitive point of view. We're moving beyond discussions of participation and getting involved in the community. Like, this is setting an intention that I want to win this thing. That is a different kettle of fish.
Mm.
I think it's so cool. You see that young kid Brady that ran that 60 odd loops on debut, and now he's right in there with a shot. I don't know if he has qualified for Worlds or not, or whether he's on the wait list. But the
So
fact that he's put himself in there is so cool.
yeah, that was such a cool debut. 68 hours. I just actually checked it this morning, the standings, because I've got Red's backup ultra on at the moment. So he's right at the
Right.
bottom in the team, which is cool.
Okay.
And there's a few people that are in the team that aren't going to be a part of it this year. So even then,
Right.
it'll drop to 2 more spots. So he's definitely in
Wow.
at the moment. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens at Reds at the moment. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think
Who
they're on
are the
about
big
lap.
names racing there?
That they're still in. You've got Ezra Dingo. He's a gun. He's won a couple of backyards in 50 odd loops and looked fresh, and just never had the chance to push further. So he's gunning for a spot on the team. I think they're at about loop 50 last time I checked, and there's about 6
Yep.
runners left. Mitch McInnes, Barry Keem, who's got a PB of 66. So it's exciting. It's a silver ticket, so the winner will get an automatic spot. And if it
Cool.
goes high enough up, then someone will get a spot by a lap title. So super exciting.
That's so exciting. Yeah, exactly right. Hey, yeah, it's such a cool time to be a part of anything ultra, in my opinion. Like, it's in such this infancy stage, and I guess the only thing that I hate seeing is the infighting, or I don't know what term to put on it, but like it still has bickering within the way that we should be organizing rules and making things more official. And I think the whole Russian disqualification started to shine the light on that, and people being like, well, ultimately this has all been built from one guy, Laz, and we're looking to him for the leadership on what to do next. And it's like, what sort of contingency plans are in place for the sport in the future? Because he's no spring chicken, as sad as it is to say. So what does the legacy of backyard look like once Laz is no longer here? And same for ultras from a trail professionalism perspective. It's like, yeah, like, what does anti-doping look like? Sponsorship deals, what's fair, what's not fair, qualification standards, what do we look like? It seems so complex when it's still so small. And I just hate for anyone that's thinking about getting into the sport being put off by that. And I don't know if it's just because we consume it because we are so passionate about it that maybe it seems like a bigger deal than it is, and it's not creating so much of an effect for people that are looking to come into the sport new. But yeah, I just hope that some of the things that people may be getting stuck up about from discussion point of view and growth of the sport isn't being sort of overshadowed by the fact that we need to be encouraging new participants to keep the sport alive.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and look, being in new sport, we're going to run into these sort of issues, particularly with the fact that sort of headed up by Laz, and then you've got all these different backyard ultra kind of race directors in Australia, and it'd be nice to have some sort of unifying committee or board or something like that
Yes.
that can really help progress the event further. So I don't think it's a negative thing. It's just something that we need to work through naturally as the event progresses, and iron a few things out. And I think we'll be in a much better place, even in 6 months' time, with moving the event forward and all that sort of thing. So it's exciting. It's just really cool to be at the very start of an event really growing. Like, it's, it started in 2011 and early days still, very early days. So yeah.
Super early. Well, look, mate, it was so good chatting everything from personal story to what you've got coming up and what you've got in the future, particularly from a coaching perspective. I'm excited to see what you do on that front, and I really hope that you continue to grow your knowledge base and share it with some clients. So I guess before we wrap up, where can I send people that may be interested in either just checking out your socials or like where they may be able to sort of reach out for some coaching services from you as well, brother?
Yeah, so I use Instagram. So yeah, Camac attack, CAMAC_attack is my Instagram page. Send me a message, and yeah, I'd love to hear from you. So
Awesome,
and
man. Well, thanks
yeah,
again so much for jumping onto the potty. You're welcome back anytime as things get closer to bigs again, or even just in the aftermath of it all. I'd love to get you back on and sort of, hopefully, the next time we speak, you've cracked 100.
that sounds good to me. Thanks so much for having me on. It's been a good chat. Appreciate it.
Legendary, mate. You take care, hey?
See ya.
See you guys.